Invited my controlling brother to live with us, he turned our lives upside down, and now he's playing the victim. While I was searching for a job at 28, my brother, who's 30, offered to help me out, and I moved in with him. I felt relieved and grateful, so I took it upon myself to keep everything tidy. I cleaned, cooked, did the laundry, the whole domestic deal. My boyfriend, 29, who also happened to be friends with my brother, would come over nightly and, feeling responsible for me, brought groceries every day to make up for what I was eating. I prided myself on my independence, so I tried to never be a financial or emotional burden to my brother. After about a month, during the holidays, my boyfriend and I made plans to visit his amazing family, while my brother went to visit our mother. We left a day earlier than he did and made sure to remind him to take out the trash before leaving because we'd be gone for 10 days at the height of summer. When we got back before him, the stench hit me right away. The garbage had been left festering on the counter, and when I checked, worms were everywhere, a crawling, disgusting mess. I threw out the whole bin. We got a new one, identical to the old, same brand, same color. When my brother returned, I told him what happened. He erupted. His face reddened, veins bulging as he shouted at me for throwing away his trash bin without asking. It didn't matter it was a $2 bin, or that we'd replaced it with the identical one. It was his space, and I was in the wrong for overstepping. I was stunned. He kept yelling until he finally ordered me to leave his house. So I did, and moved in with my boyfriend and his roommate. The very next day, my mother called to ask what happened. She never listens to my side, so I simply said I didn't want to talk about it. She told me, "It is your fault. It's his house, you don't have rights to his stuff. He's your brother, you have to obey him." I stayed with my boyfriend and his roommate for 5 months. They never made me feel like a burden. I struggled through a hard period of having no job, no home, and nearly no money. Eventually, hope returned. I landed an amazing job and found a new place with my boyfriend. Wanting to be fair, wanting to repay my brother for his earlier help, I invited him to live with us for a few months rent-free, so he could get his finances together and move somewhere better. I covered rent and utilities, because that's what you do for family, right? He moved in, right before everything went on lockdown for coronavirus. My boyfriend and I started buying furniture, a happy lamp here, a new table there, making the apartment feel like home. My brother, however, did nothing around the house. No cooking, no cleaning, no grocery shopping, not even the offer of help. It was uncomfortable, but I chalked it up to him being our guest, and I wanted to repay him for his previous hospitality. 2 weeks later, I bought a TV. Nothing prepared us for how obsessed my brother became. He watched it all day, every day, movies, documentaries, shows, non-stop. My boyfriend and I both worked from home, in addition to our postgraduate studies, but my brother seemed content to lounge in front of the screen. One evening, while my boyfriend and I were prepping dinner, I told my brother the food was ready. He just turned the TV on and left the room. Our routine was to eat in the living room. As I was setting the table, I switched to a news channel. He came back, complained about the news, and changed it back to whatever he was watching. I suggested that we find something we'd all enjoy. He immediately said he got there first and we'd watch what he wanted. I asked again for the remote. He refused. I asked repeatedly, 10 times, before, in a huff, he hurled the remote onto the floor. That was it. I told him he couldn't throw things around in my house. I reminded him he was contributing nothing around the house. The least he could do was let us have a little peace or relaxation when we could catch a moment. My brother shot back, yelling that his job was way harder than ours and that my job was easy. He belittled my work and downplayed everything I've achieved, so I responded in kind. But when he cursed at me, something my mother does regularly but is absolutely taboo for me, I was stunned. That was the strike that ended the conversation. We stopped talking. The next day, my mother called to ask what happened. I refused to say anything. She insisted it was my fault and I needed to treat my brother better since he was our guest. How dare I make him uncomfortable? If there was no lockdown, she'd have come running to rescue her grown son from my house. We didn't speak for 3 months. 2 weeks ago, I broke my ankle and had to start working from home again. Last Friday, struggling through the pain and an avalanche of assignments and spreadsheets, my mother called again and told me she wanted me to listen to her about my brother. I told her she could talk, but nothing she said would change my mind about that fight. She started crying, saying my brother had to order takeout because there was no food in the house, which made me realize I'd been so consumed with work and struggling through pain that I'd forgotten to eat myself. But that didn't matter, as long as my brother had to order takeout. Unthinkable. Today, lying on the couch, watching TV, which my brother stopped using after our fight, my brother came up and announced, "As your brother, I'm apologizing for cursing at you. I know I was right, so I expect you to apologize as well." I told him plainly that I did nothing wrong and would not apologize. He said, "You're sick in the head." His words sounded so eerily like my mother's. He accused me of having narcissistic personality disorder, called me selfish, spoiled, self-centered, all these terrible things, and finally cut me off. I was dead to him. I turned to my boyfriend and asked what he thought. He told me my brother is suffering from favoritism. I thought back to being a 14-year-old girl, the girl my mother used to tell was the reason for her failed marriage. After my parents divorced, my father had cheated, and I haven't spoken to him in over a decade. My mother made me the scapegoat. In the middle of the night, she'd wake me just to tell me I was the cause of her ruined life. Whenever things went wrong, she'd say I was sick in the head, in urgent need of help. At 14, I reached out for help. I booked an appointment with a therapist. After one visit, the therapist asked to see my mother, but we never went back. Sometimes my mother claimed the therapist had called me crazy and a psychopath, but if that were true, why wouldn't she help her own daughter? My brother got the golden child treatment growing up. He was always the favored one, lavished with praise and gifts. I was the scapegoat, the unwanted one, chronically blamed, never enough. Now, my brother parroted my mother's accusations, that I'm crazy, mentally ill. Years of this treatment have worn me down, and I even start doubting myself. I've been to therapists, one overseas, one local, and both told me, after long conversations, I'm not mentally ill. But when you're told for years that there's something wrong with you, it's hard not to believe it. I keep wondering, what if they're right? What if I am? Or is it just manipulation? My boyfriend assures me I'm not the problem, that my brother's the one blinded by years of parental favoritism. Still, part of me wonders, should I cut contact and kick him out of my house? Or am I truly as messed up as my family says? Sometimes it feels like I'm still that 14-year-old girl, the unwanted scapegoat questioning whether I'm the villain in my own life story. Update 1. After everything that happened, I decided it was finally time to call my mother and lay it all out, my side of the story, not the version she's heard 1,000 times filtered through my brother's mouth. I picked up the phone, my heart pounding, determined to be clear from the start. I am not her, and her worldviews do not necessarily reflect mine. Of course, the moment I began, she interrupted, not once, not twice, but about 100 times, just as she always does. There wasn't a moment she actually paused to try seeing things from my point of view. True to form, she quickly took my brother's side, never even hesitating. The call stretched on for a full hour. Somewhere in that cascade of interruptions, she actually blamed me for leaving food in the refrigerator for my brother. The implication was that paying the bills, doing all the cleaning, handling the laundry, and cooking the meals simply wasn't enough. I should have called him to the table and made sure he ate, too. Her exact words still ring in my ears, "You are treating him as if he is a stray dog." I let that sink in, the absurdity of it, the bite. Surprisingly enough, she claimed she didn't even know my brother wasn't contributing a dime to our expenses. Very convenient that he forgot to mention that little detail to her. I pressed on, calling her out on always taking his side. She denied it, of course, but when I asked her to name just one time she had sided with me over him, she couldn't come up with a single example. No surprise there. Near the end of our exhausting call, I told her something I'd wanted to say for a long time, that I'm already used to not really having a mother in my life. But if she truly loved my brother, she needed to stop spoiling him. I laid it all out. He's never had a girlfriend, doesn't have friends, and he's the most selfish person I have ever met. He expects everything to be handed to him, as if life should serve him everything on a silver platter. She sounded so shocked, as if it had never even struck her before that he's got no one but us. I told her to think about what I'd said and to call me back in 2 hours if, after some reflection, she agreed with me. To my surprise, she actually did call back. And, for the first time I can ever remember, she told me I am a very compassionate and good-hearted girl. That may literally be the first genuinely nice thing she's said to me. I thanked her, and decided to ask for a favor, but only if she'd agree beforehand to whatever I requested. She said yes, so I told her, I want her to stay out of my arguments with my brother. His sense of entitlement, his certainty that he's always right, it all comes from her unconditional support. I told her it always feels like it's 2 against 1, me against both of them, and I need that to stop. Now, I guess we'll see if she keeps her promise. That night, I went into my brother's room. I told him honestly, what hurt most wasn't the TV remote thrown in anger or how he ignored my rules, it was being called names in my own house, especially now, at 28. He actually apologized for swearing and yelling and promised to stop doing it. I made it clear I'm not the only decision maker here, my boyfriend's wishes matter too. I pointed out that because he's been a burden, emotionally, financially, physically, both me and my boyfriend would appreciate it if he could start looking for his own place as soon as possible. Still, I told him, even though he once kicked me out, I could never do that to him. My boyfriend spoke up too, saying he can stay here with us until he finds his own apartment. For now, he's still with us, but he's starting to try, helping out around the house, asking before using the TV. In fact, just yesterday he came and asked if he could watch TV. I had to laugh. Maybe, for the first time, my boyfriend sees he might actually be a keeper now. Update 2. After writing my last update, I finally approached my brother to ask if he was actually planning to follow through with our agreement. He was supposed to move out by the end of August. When I brought it up, he just raised his eyebrows at me and said nothing. I reminded him of our agreement, how much patience and respect I had shown, and pointed out that despite everything, he hadn't changed at all. He got offended, left the room, and said, there is a right time for everything. He's been working at his current job for 3 years, but apparently, he applied for another job without even telling me, and now he's waiting to hear back. He doesn't want to move out before he gets an answer, which I get on some level, but it's frustrating. Just 5 minutes later, my mother called me and accused me of kicking him out. I still can't understand how I've ended up looking like the bad guy who's exiling her own brother. I tried explaining again and again that I never kicked him out. She just wasn't hearing it, as usual. I reminded her that my brother contributes nothing, my own bonuses were cut because of my ankle injury, and my boyfriend's project was suspended for 4 months, piling on the financial stress. He's also about to finish his thesis and is overwhelmed. We're having real financial difficulties, and I'm digging into my emergency fund while my brother, fully aware of all this, hasn't offered a cent. And to top it all off, he even admitted he's managed to save up $30,000 since moving in with us. I don't want his money, I don't need it, but it would be nice if he even offered. My mother, ever eager to meddle, decided she was going to tell him to pay our rent. I told her to stay out of our arguments, like we agreed, but she always acts as if we're still children. I know she's trying to help, but, honestly, she just makes things worse. It's as if she doesn't care about solving problems. She just wants to find who's guilty, and, predictably, it always ends up being me. The following day, I came home and saw my brother cooking. He works from home and had made food for us for the next few days. He came to me and said he'd cover the rent and utilities. I politely declined. What I didn't say to him, because I know exactly how it would play out, is that if I took his money, both he and my mother would never let me forget it. There's always that need from them to remind you of every single thing they ever did for you. A couple of days ago, we got into one of our usual silly arguments. He started shouting and yelling again. I just stayed quiet, watching him, and wondering why he was so angry. I finally asked him, "Why are you yelling at me as if I'm your enemy?" He just stopped, and then, suddenly, he started to cry. He said he thought he was being misunderstood and it frustrated him so much. In that moment, my heart broke. I hugged him, he cried on my shoulder, kissed me on the cheek, and somehow, we ended our fight with smiles. Yesterday, he took me out shopping, and then we had dinner together, just the two of us. I know people might be disappointed in me, but honestly, I'm the type who sees mistreatment as a possible cry for help. I'm just trying to be a good sister. And as if that wasn't enough, right after I finished writing this, my boyfriend asked to go on a date again, and, when I didn't respond, he got offended. I keep trying to make things better by asking every day. Still, he says he can't take this anymore and will stay with his friend until my brother moves out. Now, I catch myself pressuring my brother to leave, and the thought of becoming the person who would kick him out sickens me. I don't want to turn into that. What should I do? Update 3. My brother finally moved into his new house, and from what he tells me, he's still working on paying off all that new furniture he bought. He even invited us over for dinner, and it honestly felt great to see him settled somewhere of his own. As for me, I'm still with my boyfriend, and we are just incredibly happy together, just the two of us. Of course, my mother can't let it go. She's still upset that I kicked him out before the corona vaccine was available. But honestly, everything is going really well now. It truly feels like a happy ending. Update 4. I thought everything was finally settling down, but life had other plans. About 2 months after my brother moved out, I noticed my boyfriend had been acting strange. He'd been working late more often, taking calls in the other room, and when I'd walk in, he'd quickly hang up or switch to something else on his phone. I tried not to overthink it. After all the drama with my family, I figured maybe I was just being paranoid. Then last Tuesday, my brother called me, which was unusual since we'd only been texting since he moved out. His voice sounded weird, almost nervous. He said he needed to tell me something important and asked if he could come over. When he arrived, he looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his hands the way he used to when we were kids and he'd broken something. "I don't know how to say this," he started, "but I saw your boyfriend last Friday night. At that new restaurant downtown. With a woman." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean with a woman?" "They were close. Holding hands across the table, laughing. It looked like a date." He paused, then pulled out his phone. "I took a picture. I wasn't sure if I should show you, but..." The photo was blurry, taken from across the street, but it was definitely my boyfriend. And the woman wasn't just anyone. I recognized her immediately. It was Sarah, his coworker who he'd mentioned a few times, the one who'd been helping him with his thesis research. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. All those late nights, all those mysterious phone calls, suddenly everything made sense. My brother sat there awkwardly while I stared at the photo, not sure if I wanted to scream or cry. "There's more," he said quietly. "I've been thinking about this for days, and I remembered something. When I was living here, sometimes when you were at work, she would call the house phone looking for him. When I told her he wasn't home, she'd ask weird questions about when you'd be back, or if you two were having problems. That night, I confronted my boyfriend. At first, he denied everything, said my brother was trying to cause problems between us. But when I mentioned Sarah specifically, his face went white. The whole story came tumbling out. They'd been seeing each other for 3 months. It started during the time my brother was living with us, when I was stressed and distracted by all the family drama. "You were so focused on your brother, on your mother, on everyone else," he said, trying to justify it. I felt invisible. Sarah listened to me, understood what I was going through. The worst part? He tried to blame me for it. Said that all the chaos with my family had pushed him away, that I'd chosen my brother over him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The same brother he'd encouraged me to help, the same brother he'd defended when my mother was being unreasonable. I told him to pack his things and get out. He left that night, but not before trying one last manipulation, telling me I'd end up alone, that no one else would put up with my complicated family situation. The next morning, my mother called. Apparently, my ex-boyfriend had reached out to her, telling her his version of events. She was furious with me for destroying another relationship and insisted I should forgive him because men make mistakes. When I told her he'd been cheating on me for months, she actually said, "Well, what did you expect? You were always too focused on your brother's problems." I hung up on her. My brother, surprisingly, has been nothing but supportive. He's called every day to check on me, even offered to let me stay at his place if I needed space from the apartment. Yesterday, he showed up with groceries and helped me change the locks. "I know I was a terrible houseguest," he said while we were putting away food. "And I know I caused problems between you two. But he should have been supporting you through all that family stuff, not using it as an excuse to cheat." It's strange, all this time I thought my brother was the problem in my life, but now I'm wondering if he was just a scapegoat for bigger issues. My ex couldn't handle any real stress or conflict, and my mother will always find a way to make me the villain in any story. I'm staying in the apartment for now. It's lonely, but it's also peaceful in a way I haven't experienced in years. No one is throwing remotes, no one is calling me names, and no one is sneaking around behind my back. Though I have to admit, there's a part of me that wonders if my mother was right about one thing. Maybe I am destined to end up alone. But honestly, after everything I've been through, alone doesn't sound so bad anymore. Update 5. I thought I was finally getting my life together after everything that happened with my ex-boyfriend. I've been living alone for about 6 weeks, focusing on work, and honestly starting to enjoy the peace. My brother had been surprisingly supportive, checking in regularly and even helping me redecorate the living room to make it feel more like mine and less like ours. Then last Thursday happened. I was working late when I heard a key in my door. My heart stopped. I'd changed the locks, so the only people with keys were me and my brother. I grabbed the baseball bat I'd started keeping by my bed, paranoia from living alone, and crept toward the front door. It was my ex-boyfriend. He was standing there, looking disheveled, holding what looked like my old spare key. "How did you get in here?" I demanded, keeping the bat visible. "I made a copy before I left," he said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "We need to talk." I told him to get out immediately, but he just walked past me into the living room, acting like he still lived there. "Sarah broke up with me," he announced, collapsing onto my couch. "She said I was emotionally unavailable and that I clearly wasn't over you." The audacity was breathtaking. He'd cheated on me for months, blamed me for it, and now wanted sympathy because his affair hadn't worked out? "That's not my problem," I said, phone in hand ready to call the police. "You need to leave. Now." But then he started crying. Real tears, the kind I'd only seen from him once before when his father died. "I made the biggest mistake of my life," he sobbed. "I know what I did was unforgivable, but I can't lose you. I've been sleeping in my car for 3 days because I can't afford my own place. I lost my job because I was so distracted after Sarah left." Against every instinct screaming at me to call 911, I felt that familiar tug of sympathy, the same weakness that had let my brother walk all over me, that had made me excuse my mother's behavior for years. "You can sleep on the couch tonight," I heard myself saying. "But tomorrow you find somewhere else to go." He nodded gratefully, and for a moment, it almost felt like old times. That was my first mistake. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of pancakes. He'd made breakfast, cleaned the entire kitchen, and was humming while doing dishes, something he'd rarely done when we actually lived together. "I want to show you I've changed," he said when he saw me. "Give me 1 week. Just 1 week to prove I'm not the same person who hurt you." I should have said no. I should have packed his things and called my brother to help remove him. Instead, I found myself agreeing to let him stay temporarily while he got back on his feet. The second mistake was not telling my brother immediately. For 3 days, my ex was a model housemaid. He cooked, cleaned, stayed out of my way when I was working, and didn't even ask to sleep in our old bedroom. But on Monday night, while I was on a work call, I caught him going through my mail. When I confronted him after my meeting, he claimed he was just organizing it for me. That's when I found the real reason he'd come back. Hidden in his jacket pocket was a letter addressed to me from a law firm. He'd opened it. The letter was about a class action lawsuit settlement from my previous job. Apparently, I was entitled to a payout of nearly $85,000 for unpaid overtime. Money I had no idea was coming. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," he said when I confronted him with the letter. "I was going to tell you." "Tell me what?" "That you broke into my home and stole my mail? I was protecting you." He exploded, and suddenly I saw the real him again. "You're terrible with money. You would have just given it all away to your brother or your mother like you always do. I was going to help you invest it properly." The mask had completely slipped off. He hadn't come back because he missed me or realized he'd made a mistake. He'd come back because somehow, I still don't know how, he'd found out about the settlement money. I told him to pack his things and get out immediately. That's when he turned nasty. You think you're so much better than me now, he sneered, but you're just like your mother, you'll end up bitter and alone, pushing away everyone who tries to help you. That money won't change who you are. He was still yelling when my brother's key turned in the lock. My brother took one look at the situation, me backed against the wall, my ex standing over me with his fists clenched, and something in his face changed. Get away from my sister, he said in a voice I'd never heard from him before. This doesn't concern you, my ex shot back. This is between me and her. What happened next surprised everyone, including me. My brother, who I'd always seen as selfish and immature, stepped between us and told my ex-boyfriend in no uncertain terms that he had 30 seconds to leave or he'd call the police. You want to know what your real problem is? My brother said to my ex as he was gathering his things. You see kindness as weakness. She gave you everything, and you mistook her generosity for stupidity. That's why you'll always be alone. After my ex left, my brother and I sat in my kitchen drinking tea, both of us shaking from the adrenaline. How did you know to come over? I asked. He looked embarrassed. I've been driving by every few days since you've been alone, just to check on you. Tonight I saw his car outside and got worried. He paused. I know I was awful when I lived here. I know I took advantage of your kindness just like he did. But watching him treat you that way, I never want to be that kind of person again. We talked until 3 a.m. that night. Really talked, maybe for the first time in our adult lives. He apologized for years of taking me for granted, for letting our mother use him as a weapon against me, for being so selfish when I was trying to help him. But the biggest shock came 2 days later. My mother called, and for once, she was calling to check on me instead of lecture me. Apparently, my brother had finally told her the truth about how she'd been treating me all these years. Not just about the recent stuff, but about everything. The middle of the night guilt trips when I was 14, the constant blame, the way she'd made me the family scapegoat. I didn't realize, she said, and for the first time in my life, she sounded genuinely sorry. I thought I was protecting him, but I was hurting both of you. I'm not ready to forgive her yet. Years of damage can't be undone with one phone call. But it's a start. As for the settlement money, I decided to do something I never would have considered before. I'm keeping it for myself. I'm going to use part of it to take a real vacation, somewhere I've always wanted to go but never felt I deserved. The rest is going into savings for my future, whatever that looks like. My brother helped me install a security system and change my locks again. My ex tried calling a few times, but I've blocked his number. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm choosing myself first. It's terrifying and liberating at the same time. Update 6. I almost didn't write this update, because, if I'm honest, I'm still catching up with the fact that my life feels nothing like the chaotic familiar drama of a year ago. But as wild as it sounds, things only got stranger, and in the kind of way you'd expect to see in some internet advice column and wonder, is this person making it up? Spoiler, I'm not. Here's what's happened. So, after the settlement drama and my brother's surprising redemption arc, I booked that trip I promised myself. The first vacation of my entire adult life, solo, 3 weeks in Portugal, hiking, sunlight, all those clickbait reboots the internet tells you will fix your soul. I expected it to give me perspective and peace. What I didn't expect was to get a flustered but polite email from Sarah. Yes, that's Sarah, the ex-boyfriend Sarah. Subject line, I owe you the truth. I almost deleted it unread, but something about the wording hooked me. Turns out, when she broke up with my ex, she also started looking through their old texts, and what she found made her want to set the record straight, not just for me, but for herself, she confessed. She'd been manipulated, constantly pitted against the crazy jealous girlfriend, me. She apologized, deeply and without excuses. She told me she was shocked by his lies, especially when she found out he'd stolen my mail and tried to cut a deal behind my back. She even attached screenshots of his plans. He was bragging to a mutual friend that he'd finally convinced her to give me power of attorney, an outright lie, and terrifyingly ambitious for a recently dumped ex. Sarah also mentioned a bizarre detail. 2 weeks after he left, he'd applied to a handful of jobs. All in towns I'd talked about wanting to escape to when we were still together. It sounded like he was trying to follow you, or maybe beat you there? Please be careful, she signed off. That sent a cold shiver down my vacation-induced tan. Not an hour after I read the email, my mother called, frantic. She told me my ex had shown up at her house, drunk, charming, and asking questions about whether I might come visit her soon. Apparently, he'd told her he just wanted to return something important that belongs to me. She was suspicious, for once, maybe even protective. Do you want me to call the police? She asked, and I had the strange realization that maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to believe I wasn't always the villain in our family narrative. When I got home, I doubled down with my brother. We upgraded my alarm, now with cameras and a silent panic button, and my brother insisted on giving me self-defense lessons, courtesy of his short-lived judo phase in college. Spoiler, I am not coordinated. I was settling back into my new normal, read, coffee dates with myself, slow mornings, plants that didn't die within weeks, when my brother called me in the middle of the day, voice uncharacteristically nervous. Are you home? Promise me you are not home? Turns out, that morning, my ex had showed up at my brother's work. Brazen as ever, asking if he knew how to reach Sarah. My brother, who now gives surprisingly good advice, said calmly, "You're not entitled to anyone here, and if you don't leave, I'm filing for a restraining order." My ex backed down, for the first time, apparently rattled that someone wasn't people-pleasing him. But this wasn't the end. It got even stranger. I had always been close to my paternal aunt, my dad's older sister, who moved to New Zealand when I was 11. We'd lost touch. Out of the blue, she messaged me on Facebook. She'd seen my name in a community legal notice. Turns out, class action settlements are surprisingly public, and wanted to reconnect. She had barely spoken to my mother since the divorce, having sided with my dad, who, by the way, still has never contacted me in all these years. We started talking, first by awkwardly scheduled calls, she's 15 hours ahead, then by long emails. Within weeks, she invited me to visit. With the settlement money, I could actually consider it. But here's where things get wild. My father tried to get in touch, having heard from my aunt that I was planning to visit the area. I hesitated for days, then weeks, before responding. My brother encouraged me to just try to get closure, if nothing else. My therapist thought it might interrupt inherited patterns of shame. My mother, to my utter shock, said, "That's your decision. I won't say a word about it." Evidently, miracles do exist. I landed in Auckland, not sure if I'd have the courage to even see my dad. My aunt picked me up at the airport by herself. "We'll play it by ear," she'd said, and I was grateful for her gentleness. It took 3 days for me to feel up to trying, and when I did, I learned the real story about why he'd left and never reached out. He'd convinced himself I hated him, thanks to my mother's relentless blame campaign. He'd convinced himself it was for the best that he stayed gone. We met for coffee in a noisy, cheerful cafe. It was awkward. We stammered, we apologized. He cried. I found out I have a half-sister, 19, with a wild laugh and a love of chess. My father asked if I wanted to meet her. I did. She turned out to be tough and surprisingly sweet, and not at all the villain I'd built in my mind. It was only after those days, meeting new family, that I realized I'd been starving for connections my whole life. Maybe that's why I'd always tried to appease everyone, even people who hurt me. When I got home, I decided this was the time to stop living through other people's disasters, family, boyfriends, even my own fears. I offered my brother, now firmly team sister, an actual apology for what we'd both done to each other over the past few years. We started a weekly ritual, Thursday pizza, equal parts cheese and unvarnished conversation. We even invited our mother. Sometimes she comes, sometimes she just calls, but she's noticeably trying. Oh, and my ex? I have a restraining order now, and all his attempts to contact me, and my family, have gone straight to the spam folder. The sense of freedom is dizzying. I open my own mail now, I manage my own money, I cook for myself because I want to, not out of guilt. Sometimes I still worry I'm broken, too much a product of this tangled family for anyone to ever really get me. But lately, I'm realizing that maybe the life we make out of all the broken pieces is actually more interesting than the smooth, perfect one. If anybody is still reading, I hope you know that even the craziest, saddest family stories can take wild, unpredictable turns. Sometimes the villain becomes your protector, the golden child becomes a friend, and the person who broke your heart helps you find your way to something bigger, and much, much freer.